Okay, you got to tell me
Hi.
about this on the show. Oh, hello. Hello. We're having some pre-show talk and but now we're rolling.
That's
So
right. We were talking about my fancy new mustache.
it's so extra fancy. Like it's really great. And I want to hear the backstory. But first, welcome. Welcome to Talk Openly. It's a pleasure to be here on this Tuesday night, end of May, like the end of May.
Summer's here.
Summer's here. Well, here in Washington, it's not here yet. It's quite
No.
cool. But sorry. I'm not complaining actually. It's all good. But I'm Jack, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm here tonight with my excellent friend Daniel. And Daniel, just so you know, my allergies are real bad, so I might be kind of rubbing my eyes, weeping every
Okay.
once in a while.
All right. Okay. All right.
We're gonna make
Hey.
it work. We're gonna make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just tearing up over here. It's that mustache,
It's
man.
it's tears of joy at seeing this mustache. I know. I know. I feel that way too, Jack, sometimes. When I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, it's just so
It's
breathtaking.
it's so breathtaking. Okay, so now that we're going to be talking a little bit, we are going to talk about the mustache, but mostly tonight we're talking about this concept, not concept, but just this thought that springs up sometimes, I think, in spiritual life and practice is like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, what the heck am I doing here?
What am I doing? There's so many other things I could do with my what feels like single life, right? This like
Yeah,
one life that I get,
that's
you
right.
know, what am I doing? Doing all this prostrations and sitting and doing nothing.
Ah, doing
Yeah.
nothing when we could be doing something.
Right, exactly. So we're going to talk all about that tonight in the second half of our show. But first, I would love to check in with you, and we got to talk about, you know what?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the backstory?
Well, I first of all, I just gotta say this topic is super relevant. I've been
Yeah,
having
okay.
I don't know if it's the change in seasons or what, but like this very thought, and not because we plan to talk about it on the show, it just literally is like happening now where I'm like,
Yeah.
the hell am I doing here? I could, there's all kinds of other things to do. So I really look forward to this conversation. I have some thoughts and feelings around it. Um, yeah, and actually maybe partially it's a little bit. I do feel I don't know which way it works, whether that feeling or those thoughts or those sentiments have given rise to a little bit of I wouldn't say it's like I haven't stopped my practice, my meditation practice at all, right? But like I'm a little bit more loosey-goosey with it, right? A little bit more hmm, not like I don't know, maybe not taking it quite as um it's not that it's not serious. I don't know quite the right way to put it, but like it's not sort of front and center like it usually is,
Yeah.
right? I'm still doing mind training, still like every day, like I'm still doing my practices, but it's a little different. The vibe's a little bit different. And so I don't know if it's because the vibe is different that I'm having these kinds of thoughts, or if it's because I'm having these kinds of thoughts that the vibe is different, but somehow
Mm,
it's all correlated.
chicken
Uh,
egg.
yeah, chicken egg thing. So anyway, yeah, generally speaking though, things are pretty groovy. Like both in terms of life, I'm super busy, and so I wake up really early, go to bed really late, and the days are full in between, and that gives my burgeoning facial hair a chance to grow. So
That's right.
the funny story is, so I'm gonna go visit my brother in Spain in a few weeks.
Woo!
Yes, I'm super excited about it. And it's been a minute since he's seen me. Never, not once in his life has he ever seen me with facial hair because we're not really like hairy guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm not cutting the back of my hair. It's not super long, but like on my head, I'm like letting it go a little bit just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And then I'm growing this little mustache thing here. Just so that when he picks me up or when he shows up at the airport or whatever, like the first thing he sees is like I look completely different.
Yeah, yeah, nice.
Right? Yeah, and then when he hugs me, he's gonna be like, "Dang, you're buff too, right? Been working out,
Yeah,
strong and
yeah,
stuff,
hell
right?"
yeah.
Yeah, so he's gonna be like, "Where'd my baby brother go?"
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm
That's
just
so sweet.
what? Yeah, I'm just doing it all for the plot. It's just for
Oh yeah.
fun, you
Nice.
know. So I bet when I come, I can't. I actually really don't. I don't care for this thing. It's not the look. It's just it feels weird. You know, if you've never had facial hair, it's a little weird. Tickles my nose.
Yeah.
It always feels like there's like a fuzzy caterpillar on my upper lip, and
Yes.
I'm not so sure that I like it, you know. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
seems kind of difficult, and the food part doesn't seem to make sense. Like the
yeah,
eating of the food and
yeah.
the particles and the hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't understand any. I don't know why anybody would want to do this. Really, like, no,
Mhm.
not knocking you. You know, you hairy guys do your thing. I love it. Like, it looks good aesthetically and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. I just, it's
Yeah.
not really my thing. It's just for fun. You know, if I
Yeah. What do
could,
your kids?
what's that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask what do your kids think?
Oh, they're like, whatever, Dad, you do
Here,
you.
yeah.
Like, yeah, they're supportive, but they're not like enthusiastic or anything. They're just like, all
Yeah.
right, Dad, do your thing. Yeah,
That's cool.
if I could get a mullet going, because they're so in right now, you know,
Yeah.
like the mullets have made a comeback, and if I could do if I could do, even though I'm bald, right? If I could pull off a
Yeah.
bald man mullet, like it's okay. I don't care. I'd be down. I would totally do it. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll look a little different when he sees me, and then
Yeah.
I'll probably go back to my shaved head and bald face, bald head when I get back.
Well, I mean,
Just having some fun.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Hold the mullet dream in your heart because I can totally see it, like and it'd be good. It'd be good.
Dude, it would be so cool. It really would be. I even if it was that sort of like, you know, the balding man kind of mullet, like I'd be down. I'm totally cool with that, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, I like the, you know, like cutting, you know, like where you cut this, you shave like the sides of the head a little bit and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun stuff. You know, I don't have a lot of hair, but what little hair I have, it's fun to play with sometimes.
It
So
is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, little pleasures in life, but you know, at some point it will be gone, I know, so I'm not too attached to
Yep.
it.
Yep. Well, and you will have to take some pictures so you can have a little bit of a memory
Yes,
attachment.
yes, indeed, indeed, no doubt about it. So yeah, so that's what's going on with me. All kinds of, you know, life is just it's just doing its thing, you know, nothing
Yeah.
too exciting to report on. Uh
Yeah.
although tomorrow I am kind of stoked. Tomorrow we have a very special visitor to Lions Roar Dharma Center.
That's right.
It's Ling Rinpoche, and he is it's interesting. He is the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama's junior tutor. And so I find that really fascinating because I don't know how it all works, you know. But he seems like a really uh, genuine person. And I look forward to meeting him and learning from him. He's going to be teaching us about Manjushri. And yeah, so I'm stoked. It's a big deal having him
It is
come
a big
because
deal.
you know what's amazing. So I'm on social media a lot, doing things for Lions Roar, and I see all these other places he's traveling to in the United States. And I mean, they're like massive gatherings, right? Like I'm talking parades and like thousands of people coming out just to be in his presence and hear what he has to
Wow.
say. And here he's coming to our tiny little Dharma center.
Yeah.
There's just a few of us there. You know, it's not a bunch of people, right? We do our best to be warm and welcoming, but we, you know, like it's so different, sort of like the size, the vibe, it's much more intimate here. It's gonna be like up close and personal. So I'm really looking
Oh,
forward to that.
wow. Yeah.
I'm so grateful that he's willing to come here.
I bet he's looking forward to it too. Like
Yeah.
I think a teacher of that stature, with all those big events would probably really enjoy like a smaller, kind of more intimate time with people. So I think that's going to be fantastic. And Lama mentions that, when he has these teachers come, they're always so impressed, right, by the dedication of the Sangha and like, the real work that people are putting in on their spiritual paths, and also the alignment that Lama is doing with lineage Dharma.
Yeah.
It we're not just doing kind of some like Western conglomeration of different kind of, Buddhist
Hmm.
snippets and, Western mindfulness. We're really, really following a lineage while also making it relevant for, Westerners. And so I think they really like to see what we're doing here. So I'm excited for
Indeed.
everyone. This is going to be great.
Yeah, 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 I'm stoked. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday, the 29th. Super
Yeah.
stoked. Yeah.
Yep. I'll be there. I'll be there online.
Nice,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, what's going on with you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier about that tendency or maybe just experience right now in your training, in your practice, of just a little bit of the feeling of decentered, a decentering of the training. And so I appreciate you sharing that because I'm also, um, somewhat in that place as well in my life, in my training. And I've been there before,
Yeah,
like this isn't the first time that that's happened. And I know that it's going to change. It's going to, go kind of meander the other direction and then go back that way again. And so, I'm
that's
not
right.
putting I'm not putting too much of like a serious label on it, like there's nothing like I'm not in danger, right? Like there's not like I'm not like at risk of like doing drugs or like um stopping meditating, or like yeah, being furious at our teacher or, sangha or anything like that. It's just that things don't feel quite as like um this presence of mind that is paying attention to what I'm doing throughout the day for the benefit of myself and other beings. Like that, there's times where I'm really there, and that's
Yeah.
that's very exciting, and it's kind of like um, you just kind of engage with the world differently. Um, but yeah, so that's it's not happening right now. It's still I'm still of course doing my training, and it's um something I've done that's been a little bit of a harm reduction approach is that in my shamatha sits, I break it up. So I still do the full 24 minutes at a time, but I have bells going off every six
Hmm.
minutes.
Yeah,
And something about that right now, where my mind is really scattered outward, I'm focusing
yeah,
on jobs getting back to me and moving and all the things like so my mind is just very much out is that just helps me stay on track.
yeah,
So it's like, oh hey bud, we're still doing this, come back. It's like it's an external reminder when I feel like my internal reminders aren't working as effectively right now.
yeah,
um so yeah, it's a little bit of a harm reduction approach of like, okay, maybe this isn't the way that I want to do this all the time. Like maybe I don't want to get used to that.
yeah.
But for right now, it's actually really helping me do my training and apply myself with a little bit of extra help. So
Isn't that
that's kind
nice
of
that
what's
isn't
happening.
that nice that you can be so flexible in your practice, that you're not
Yes.
so rigid and frozen and it has to be a certain way. I mean, like if you needed to, you could drop it down to 6 minutes, 12 minutes, you can add a little background noise, you can do guided meditation. You know what I mean? Like you can mix it up a
Yeah.
little bit. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact,
Yeah.
I can't help but think back to, so on Sunday I went to the meditation practice at the temple, and Lama was leading it. And he was giving some good advice on the subject of balance. And that was really the theme of what he was talking about. It was like striking a balance, both in meditation and in our life, and really the middle way, right? And as you and I are talking, I can't help but think that it feels similar, this thing that we're talking
Mm.
about. You said something like off-centeredness or something like that. I can't remember the exact word
Yeah.
that you used.
Like
Um,
decentered or something.
Decentered,
Yeah.
thank you. off balance, decentered, right? It's just a little, it's not like you fell off your cushion and hit your head or something. It's not like
Right.
that. That's what you're saying, right? But it's a little bit when you pay attention, you're like, "Oh, I'm actually leaning kind of off to the left and backwards. I'm not balanced and I can feel the a slight difference in my body. It's not at perfect ease, right? It's not totally in alignment with gravity, right? And it's that kind of a feeling. Like you just notice it and you're like, oh, okay. And then it's okay, just correct. No biggie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and one of the like little corrections that I tried today was at the end of my 24-minute shamatha sit, I did just a very brief tonglen.
Yeah.
Um just because I'm so amazed when I'm really engaged with the tonglen practice, just how much it like transforms my everyday experience.
Mm.
So I did a short one where usually what I'll do is I'll visualize, each kind of person for several rounds of breath. But this time I just did one round of breath
Nice. I love
per
it.
person.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what,
So
Jack? I am so gonna
yeah,
do that. I
yeah.
usually do it. I usually do it for fewer people, but just kind of a longer session with each one, or with whatever being it is that I'm working with. And I like what you're saying. Kind of just like go through like a bunch of people with one breath each. Come on, let's go.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, and
like
you can
it.
still get all of the visuals, and it's just that you're not kind of dropping down as deep and engaging with each one. You're just kind of
Right.
like still sending just as much like goodness
Uh,
towards the
I like
person,
that.
but just like a little quick,
Do you ever
little quick.
have you ever practiced with doing the Tonglen before shamatha?
I have, yeah,
Yeah.
it's powerful. It's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
I like it both ways. I used to speaking of those intermittent bells, I used to do it so that my sit like when I've been in the same situation where I'm like, man, I cannot just sit and for the whole time quietly. I'll break it up so that it's like 12 minutes of shamatha, then there'll be like a bell, and then I'll do Tonglen, and then it'll give me like another different bell, right? To indicate, okay, you can switch to a different Tonglen, like, and then so I create like a little shamatha Tonglen sandwich, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
right, I'll insert the Tonglen in the middle, just to mix it up a little bit. And it's good to experience it, beginning, middle, end.
No, I think that's good. I've also been practicing uh something that Ellen actually taught me, is this uh form of doing shamatha where you're kind of like going in and out of different focuses.
Mm.
So like I start with kind of like my body, then I move to like my breath, and then more kind of spacious awareness, which I don't seem to have much
Yeah.
contact. But yeah, that was, I think that's helpful for me right now too. And I don't think that that's a necessarily great one for everybody. Like I think a lot of people might benefit from just sticking with one, right? And I think that's kind of the more traditional way, is like just stick with one object
Yeah, yeah,
throughout the
absolutely.
session.
Without a
Um,
doubt. I think that the traditional approach, I think when getting started is the best until you gain some ground and some stability in the practice,
yeah,
then it's really best to stick to like a nice simple practice.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been interesting to experiment a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
nice. And
But
and
otherwise, yeah, life is fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're still doing the job hunt, it sounds like.
Well, so I had a second interview last Friday
Okay.
for a behavioral health specialist within primary care. And I emailed them afterwards and, expressed my appreciation. They got back to me and said that we'd like to have you on our team. So HR is gonna contact you early next week. I haven't heard from them yet. So, holiday weekend and
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
I'm not going to yeah, expect all of the things that I want to happen um as soon as I want them to happen. So I definitely
Sounds
felt some
wise.
some anxiety today about it, but yeah, I think that's gonna happen. It seems
Nice.
like it. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
hope so. If it's a good job, I hope so.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll be out on the Olympic Peninsula. So,
Heck
which is a
yeah.
beautiful place if anyone's been there or wants to go. It's an amazing kind of forested, watery kind of wonderland. So, yeah, recommend.
The you say Peninsula?
No, Olympic.
Olympic. I'm
There
sorry. I
are
don't know.
there are humpback whales that pass by.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
Oh
pretty cool.
wow. I'm looking at pictures of that. Even if you can't go, just that's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing. You gotta
Oh
come. You gotta
man.
visit.
Hey, there's even hot springs nearby.
Yeah, there's hot springs. There's
Oh,
waterfalls.
oh my
There's a
goodness.
rainforest. There's
All right.
mountains and beaches. Yeah, check
I
out
I hope you
first
have
and
a
second.
space for me to pitch a tent or something. I'm coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah,
All
no,
right.
that would be fantastic.
Good. That's wonderful. That looks beautiful. Wow, you're so
Yeah,
so fortunate.
I know. I really am. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's super amazing. All right, my friend.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're gonna do some
You
lojong.
know what time it is.
It's that lojong time.
It is. All right, let's do it. We are on the random Lojong slogan generator on lionsroardharmacenter.org, made by our very own Dirk.
Dirk, who gave a wonderful talk
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. Wasn't that great?
Oh, it was fantastic. Like
He
it was,
does. Wow.
yeah, wow. I loved it. It was a talk all about the defeat of Mara.
Yeah, it was so good.
It was
And
such a
he
great talk.
translated it.
I
That
know,
was
and
the translation.
his singing, loved his singing.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that talk, it's on YouTube. We've got lines for our YouTube. And Dirk Johnson did a great talk recently.
Yep. The defeat
All
of
right,
Mara. Okay, hit it.
let's check this out. So 19, all Dharma has a single purpose. And it looks like we've got a few paragraphs here. So, sit back,
Yeah.
relax. I'm gonna read this for you. The first instruction is that all Dharma, all the teachings of the Hinayana and Mahayana have one common purpose, to reduce or eliminate the clinging to a self. Whatever Dharma we practice, whatever mind training we meditate on, the purpose is to diminish that clinging. If our clinging doesn't diminish, then our practice isn't working properly. If we notice that the continual thought of ourselves as important is decreasing, it is one sign that mind training is working. If we want to know whether our Dharma practice is working or not, we have to examine it by asking, do I still consider myself to be important? Am I still clinging to myself as something precious? For instance, if we had a piece of gold and wanted to know how much we had, we could not know this just by looking at it. We would have to put it on a scale and weigh. Similarly, measuring our clinging to a self is a way of telling if our Dharma practice is working. Is our clinging to the self diminishing or increasing? It is said there are 84,000 kinds of Dharma, which are too numerous to understand and practice fully. For instance, if practitioners in the main vehicles of the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana do not have a thorough understanding, they may have the impression that the Hinayana or Shravakya is very different from Mahayana and even more different from the Vajrayana. This is not a correct view because all of the Buddha's teachings agree. And that was from the 7 Points of Mind Training by Trala Kyabgon, or excuse me, Khinchen Thongru Rinpoche. Wow, great. I want to hear what you think your answers to those questions might be. Because
Well, I would
I'm
say that first of all, all Dharma has a single purpose, and that is to reduce this clinging to a self. I thought we were trying to eliminate suffering.
exactly.
Those two things are the same. It's
I
one
think
and the
they're the same.
same. Oh, I get it. I get it. Um, you
Oh
know,
man.
I yeah, it's funny, right? I think actually kind of like what we were talking about earlier, these thoughts sometimes show up. related to our practice. And when we are sort of on, there is this feeling, this lightness of being, right? We're not so heavy, we're not so solid. And that's a good it's a pleasant place to be, right? Like it feels really good, very sort of like it's natural and very spacious and kind of clear and I don't know, easygoing for the
Mhm.
most part. I
Mhm.
think even if we're super busy and even if there's a lot of stress, even if there are many stressors that are apparent in our life, usually we can sort of handle it well. But then there are these times when we're a little off balance and we can feel gravity a little bit more, right? We're not so
Mhm.
in alignment and it's like we feel the weight of our being more. And I think that that's where the sense of self-importance begins to become a little bit more clear that we haven't actually, at least in my case, it becomes more clear like, oh, I haven't, I haven't reached the end goal yet.
Yeah.
There's still a lot here. Um, and it's just like sometimes it's sort of like ebbs and flows, right? And that
Yep.
there are these times where I feel more solid, more heavy. And then those, and what I find really interesting about this track is that, um, in fact, there is greater suffering involved in greater self-importance. So
Yeah.
when I begin, so one of the thoughts, I know we talk about like the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma and all of that. But one of the things that's super helpful for me when I, start to feel this sort of pull of like, man, I don't know if I want to keep doing this mind training stuff anymore, right? Like Lion's Roar, the Dharma Center is busy. Like I love the people and the teachings have been helpful, but maybe I just kind of want to, I should just be, I'd have so much more time on my hands and I could do
I
so
know.
many other things and whatever, right? Like when that kind of thinking appears, it's really interesting that the thing that I find most helpful personally is to simply reflect back. And my memory is, good enough that I can, and I haven't been doing this long enough, that I can remember what it was like before all of this.
Yeah.
And and when I look back and I really contemplate, I think about it, I'm like, geez, Louise, I was a mess,
Such a mess.
right? Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
maybe I was wrapped up in some of life's pleasures, but I didn't really enjoy them. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really like to the degree that I could have enjoyed those pleasures, I didn't. And in fact, there was a lot more heaviness and existential dread, right? Like there was all
Oh
this,
yeah.
oh, it was harsh. Like I was full of anxiety and like every little thing felt super stressful, like
Yeah.
just like and I wasn't even that busy, Jack.
I
Like
know, right?
nowadays, like I was saying, like, man, I wake up early in the morning, I go to bed late, and everything is full,
Yeah.
jam-packed in the day, right? And I'm capable of doing it all, and it feels rewarding and it's worthwhile. Whereas before, I was a lot more just hanging out, stoned out of my mind by myself, just chilling, which
Yeah.
sounds, like there's a part of me that now sometimes is like, oh yeah, that would be so nice, wouldn't it? But then when I look back, I think that was miserable,
Yeah,
right? That
miserable.
was not
Totally.
enjoyable. I don't know what like which part of me thinks that there's something enjoyable there, but I
Yeah.
lived that life for a long time and it was not, it wasn't fun, right? It was miserable. And so
Yeah.
so when I know my Dharma practice is working, is that that light, I'm able to move through it. It's not so heavy. I'm balanced, right? And it's easy to move forward. Whereas, if I feel a little off balance, like what we're talking about, it's not that the Dharma practice is not working. It's just that I'm not working it as as much, right? Um,
Right.
yeah, and so I can sort of feel that effect, and I think that's a good thing because that feeling balanced, it is experiential, right? Only we know when we're balanced, right?
Totally.
Like somebody
Yeah.
else could look at us and be like, "Yeah, you look a little off balance, or you seem a little off balance, or whatever," but only we can tell. We have that inner feeling, right? I totally know when I'm balanced in the Dharma, so to speak. I know what that feels like.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And I
For
know what
sure.
it feels like to be out of balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I like can you go up just a little bit? I wanted to see again. Um, yeah, that the single purpose is about reducing that like that precious kind of feeling that we have about ourselves,
Yeah.
which is different, right, from, reminding ourselves of the preciousness of our human life. And I think that's an important distinction, is that, there's a kind of preciousness that I've definitely I've started to encounter it a little bit in my training. Like kind of, if I really am thinking about my own death, and that I'm going to change, and in just short time, relatively, like my body's going to be very different, my life's going to be very different, my capacities for things are going to be very different,
Yeah.
for good or, good or better or worse. um but there's this thing that happens in my mind where I'm kind of like, oh no, 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 no. you know, like, and I think that like, no, 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 is that it's that clinging attachment. It's like,
Sure.
I've encountered this false self that I recognize is a completely just made up construction. And yet I really want it. I really want it to be real. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I worked hard for this, damn it. Um, and so that kind of preciousness is very different from, reminding ourselves of the preciousness of our human life that has so many profound opportunities for us to learn the Dharma and grow in our spiritual path, and move forward in multiple lives, future lives, to yeah, to really do this thing. So it's very different. And I find another thing that I find really interesting about this too is that in cutting through that attachment to, ourselves, the false self is also so different from attacking ourselves. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're completely different
Yeah.
approaches. And there sometimes I feel really mad at, like, even all of like my clinging, right? I'm like annoyed at myself, or just kind of like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a spiritual practitioner. um and that's really different. That's actually just more ego.
Yeah, it
um
is. Yep.
so, it's interesting. We've got to take a really kind of like fine look at these things, and see like where it works, and where it's maybe different from our normal way of doing things, or our typical kind of habitual way of doing things. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad you pointed that out. It's easy to misunderstand. The ego will grab onto everything, including Dharma,
everything.
right?
Everything.
Right. It's it's just like just grabbing, just doesn't really matter what it is. It's like, yes, I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that, right? That's my support.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Always trying to find ground, right? Oh,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm a Dharma practitioner. That's what I am. I'm a
yeah.
good, righteous human being. Oh, that's what I
Yeah.
am. Oh,
Or I'm a horrible
I'm so
practitioner.
terrible. I'm a
I'm
bad
the
boy.
worst. It's so funny. It is.
It is, it is, and it's fun to catch it, right?
It
It's
is.
not fun to be lost in it. That part's not really fun, right?
Yeah.
When you're identified with that self, that little self, and it, especially when it begins to, like, so when it begins to notice that it's being humiliated, right?
Yeah.
And that the light is shining on it, right? It's like a little cockroach that wants to like scurry away or something. Not to
Yeah.
put, it's not, I'm not, whatever. Our egos are necessary to get us there, right? Like whatever. Like I kind of I get it, but at the same time, it's interesting to see how there's this reaction, sort of like, no, like a vampire to the sunlight or something, you know?
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it really wants to stick around, by any means
Yeah.
possible.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
my favorite is when it's like, well, everything is emptiness, so I am nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm nothing.
Yeah.
And nope, nope, not that either, bro.
Well, yeah, for sure. I know how funny that we can solidify Emptiness.
right? It'll just keep trying. It's kind of fun to
I
like if you
know.
get a little space, it's fun to watch, but man, alive, do not want to get it, don't want to get wrapped up with it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
For
like
sure.
watching it's like watching like a little kid or something, you know? Like it's good. Like it's like you could kind of laugh at it and see what it's up to, you know, but
Mm.
you really don't want to be overly identified with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm,
For sure.
mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Well, let's jump in, yeah?
Yeah,
We've been
why
talking a little bit about
we
this topic
have, we
already,
have,
but
we have.
yeah.
What are some of Samsara's greatest pleasures?
That's such a good question because when now that I've like I think, immersed myself enough in the Dharma, it's like, I hear that word samsara and it's like, well, of course nothing. But when I'm going about my everyday life, like totally, of course I'm like thinking about pleasures in that way that like, yeah, there are like I'm definitely I'm gonna sleep in, this
Yeah.
weekend. Like that's a big one for me. It's like sleeping in, and like this morning I slept through my alarm and
Uh,
wasn't able to meditate in the morning. So I had to do it
and
on my lunch break. So like sleep is a funny one for me. Food. Um, and what's interesting is that once I have them, I'm not paying attention to them.
I know.
Um,
Right.
like the sleep one, well, it's really just like getting into bed and like closing my eyes. And then it's also like the thing that feels pleasurable is like waking up and being like, no, I'm
Yeah,
going back to sleep, right?
that's right. Oh, that's the best.
And it's the best, but also then I'm just asleep. Like I don't even like I don't realize that I'm sleeping. I'm just asleep. So that one is so funny for me because it's like, what am I really like? Where's the pleasure in this? It kind of fascinates me. How about does that happen with you with sleep or?
Yeah, the only thing is that that part, so I don't like when I'm going to sleep, I don't have enough time before I'm out. So I don't really there's a sense of relief or whatever as my head hits the pillow, but that's about it. But then that thing that you're talking about, the sleeping in thing, it's so rare. Like I might be able to do it a couple of times a month. And
Yeah.
I love it because I get to see my mind. I get to get into these really dreamy states.
Yeah,
So
the
like if
weird dream.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm not like I totally like I'll kind of like come out of it, realize what's happening, I go back in and watch it a little bit more and then come out. It's like watching TV or something, except it's more
It
fun.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I dig it. I love that. And food, love, all kinds of food, but like desserts kind of things like tiramisu.
Yep.
A good tiramisu. That's nice. Right? Dogs and cats. But you know what I find so interesting about all of these pleasures is how the pleasure is not like it's kind of easy to think like, oh, if I have that, like whatever. Like, I'll use the cat as an example. She's right here next to me.
I thought I saw someone walking around. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her to death. She's Lola Boo. She's a sweet little cat, right? And she
Oh,
loves me, right? We have a good relationship. Um, but generally, I so like I came walking in earlier. She's laying on the bed and she does these cute little meow, meow, and she rolls over, all adorable, and it just I was like the purest pleasure. It was really
I
beautiful.
know.
Right? I was just like, oh, yeah, you silly little goof. And I rub her belly. And, it's like we have this moment and it's really gorgeous. But at 3 o'clock in the morning when she's meowing at me, she's
You're
not
like,
any, you know what I mean?
F
Like
you.
she's just wanting the same, right? Like she got a good
Yeah.
reaction, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm grumpy. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm so mad at you. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like, and so it's obvious that the pleasure or, the good sensations or whatever, they're super dependent on all kinds of things and they're not in the thing itself.
Yeah. And they're specifically dependent on me, like
Right, right,
me. And when I want it, like it's
right.
all the context is me.
Me. Exactly. Like
Yeah.
I a good tiramisu, yes, but after a heavy meal, no, right? Like
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
not. Like maybe, give me a minute. Right. There's all those things, right? Like sometimes a crying baby can be like, oh, it's so like, oh, precious little baby. And other times you're just like nails on a chalkboard,
Oh
right?
yeah. That's usually for me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, understood. I totally get it. Yeah. But it's all like that. There isn't anything
Yeah.
that's not like that, right?
Right.
Like
Right. Yeah.
all of the pleasures, every single one of them is like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so it's context driven, centered around the self, and that, you know, one one dose of something might give us that pleasurable feeling, but then if it keeps coming, it's going to start feeling pretty unpleasurable, in fact.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it feels like you can never get enough of a good thing, a good thing, quote unquote. But then actually it's overwhelming and sickening even.
Dude, it reminds me. So I think to me, I think like drunks and addicts have like the easiest thing to relate to there, right? Like
Right, yeah.
that's how I always felt in my with my drinking, right? Like I I wanted to just like get it to that right to that sweet spot
Oh
and
yeah.
then just
Oh yeah.
and then just keep it there. But I could
Just ride that out.
never, dude, I could never ever do it, right? That's why I had
No.
to completely stop drinking was man, I was like I'd go and I think, yeah, this is good, this is good. One more, that'll keep it going. Nope, nope. Then it was one more. Oh gosh, now I'm sick and feel bad
Yeah.
and hungover the next day and feeling all ashamed and guilty and all that nonsense, right? And the
Yeah.
same kind of I was talking to a friend of ours the other day, and it was fascinating. She was talking about the exact same thing as it relates to like food and like eating sweet things, right? All the same kind, like, oh, if I can just have these cookies, and if I can make them last enough, and I only have one every hour or what, all this mental energy, all this energy
Yeah.
going into
Totally.
trying to maintain something that is by nature impermanent and, as you said, context driven.
Yeah. And also like really damaging. You know,
Oh
like
yeah.
these I think all of our pleasures, except maybe the cat, right? Like I think you could get loving from a cat a lot. And like maybe the bad thing that's gonna happen is you don't do as much work or something. Maybe that's but like in terms of like intaking various pleasures, like you're going to have a negative effect at some point. Like sugar is such poison. Like I've started calling any like cookie or like cake or anything is just like, oh, that's some good looking poison.
Yeah, it's
You
straight
know,
up
like it's
poisonous.
some very attractive poison.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and it's actually really helped me reduce my sugar intake. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, that it's like we can't get away from these kind of like consequences of like the various pleasures too.
Yeah, though, I think that it's interesting because, like you were mentioning with the cat, like, oh, it's not really as obvious, right?
Yeah.
Seeing beautiful rainbows or experiencing nature or something like that, right? It's not so obvious where the suffering is there. And I think that that's why it's important to sort of differentiate why we have we oftentimes might think about these different types of suffering, right?
Mm,
Like, right, there's like within Buddhism, there's at least this like definition of like three different kinds of suffering, right?
yeah.
There's the sort of like the basic, I don't know, like existential suffering, just like that we exist. I
Mm,
felt that a lot in my life, right? Like just the whatever, maybe the like apparent meaninglessness of it all, and what's this all about kind of suffering. And then there's
yeah.
that like, the pain of life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like when the cat dies, that's
Right.
pain.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's just like there's no that's real suffering,
Totally.
right? Or when whatever. It's something like when bad things happen.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is that it does happens all the time. The other thing about it is like when we're sitting here, one of the things that I was thinking about was, oh yeah, there's all these pleasures. There's a lot of people are like, man, my life's actually pretty good, right? Things are fine. I don't know, like, why would I be thinking about suffering? Like I have everything and things are good, right? Well, in that very moment, whatever it is, that enjoyment, that perfect health that you've got, maybe you're like in a God realm of some sort, right? Great, good for you. This is nice. But at the exact same time, there are people in hell,
Yeah.
right? There
Yeah.
are like it's awful for them right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's happening right now.
Right
Like
now.
at the
Yeah.
exact same time as you're enjoying petting your kitty or whatever it is, right? And it feels so good. You're in nature and everything's right with the world. At that very moment, there are people going through hell.
Right. So like how could we, just sit in our, even mild pleasures
Yeah.
and feel like, just kind of stable in that, there's no stability in that. There's
No, not
there's
at
other,
all.
yeah, other beings suffering so greatly.
At
Um,
some point, they're gonna come crashing in. The whales and crying,
yeah,
like that people, the notion of sort of getting stuck in this sort of nirvana state or whatever. At some point, the whales of your neighbors, they're gonna come through, right? They're gonna penetrate
yeah.
and they're gonna move you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, I think that's the real call of the Bodhisattva, right? Is
Mhm.
that, you know, we could certainly attain liberation, with all of the training that is offered us, and the skill sets that we're being given. We could find liberation for ourselves. But what the Mahayana path is asking of us is that we not shut out the wailing of our neighbors, and that, in fact, this greater liberation is dependent on liberating others.
Ex
Um, and
exactly
we can't
that.
have all these distractions, right? These small pleasures that we're so caught up in are really, I think, that's one of the big things for me, is that I notice how much it's just distracting me from that call to care, right?
Yeah.
Um, for others, and to care about this path.
That's right. I like the metaphor of like a samsaric sea, right? Like when we're in it, when I reflect back on my life, before Dharma practice, um, it really was a samsaric sea, and I was being tossed around like, oh my God, like it was like big storms, and I couldn't, I was getting drowned and beat up, and it was cold and dark and scary, and there were sharks nipping at me, and you know what I mean? Like it was gnarly. That's how
Yeah,
it felt anyway. And then there's like a respite. There's like somebody threw me a buoy or whatever, like a little lifesaver, and pulled me pulled me up, gave me a little like a respite where I'm like, oh, nice, right? And there's nothing wrong with taking that little break and being like, like getting some peace, getting some calm, right? Like get being safe yourself, right? There's nothing
totally.
wrong with self-liberation. That's that Hinayana path, right? And that's good. That's
Yeah,
fine and dandy, man. But at the same time, like we don't want to just like hang out on the rocks while all of the, our former shipmates are still out there getting
yeah,
beaten up. If especially if we learned how to navigate it all, if we
yeah,
learn how to throw lifesavers of our own, if we learn how to swim out and get them, whatever the case might be, like let's do it, right?
yeah,
It would be a shame to sit there on the rocks and just watch as everybody else gets trashed, right?
yeah. Yeah, no, that I love that metaphor. And there's part of me that I wonder sometimes, like, will I ever get to that point where I am kind of just sitting on the rocks? Like part of me wonders, like,
Mm,
am I gonna, I know that I'm, with the teachings that I'm being given, very skillfully from our teacher, is that, I am in the lineage of the Mahayana. But part of me kind of doubts, like, like I think there's doubt that comes up where I wonder, like, gosh, could I be one of those folks who just kind of, I'm cool with self-liberation, And
mm.
like you said, it's an important part of the path, and it's not, there's nothing wrong with it.
You totally got to put that ma oxygen mask on yourself first,
Yes, for sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just interesting to think about.
It
Yeah.
is. You know, the other thing is, regardless of, which form of reincarnation you might think of, right? Like if you buy into the the samsaric realms discussed in Buddhism, it means that we're on this endless cycle. That's what samsara is, of death and rebirth into these different realms. And sometimes, yeah, sure, based on our karma, we might be born as humans, we might be born as demigods or as gods, and that sounds really good, but there's a lot of suffering in all of those realms. And also because of eons and eons of all kinds of karma, right? There's a good chance that we might end up in one of the hells, right? Or as a hungry ghost or as an animal, right? And I think that within all of these realms, they're all realms of suffering. And
Yeah.
the other thing is that within with the idea is that if you don't seize this precious human life that you have right now, um, it might be a really long time. You might have many, many, many existences before it happens again.
Right.
Right. And that's what part of what you were saying, right? That's the preciousness of this human life. Now, this one that we're talking about right here,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity to, if you've met the Dharma, you have the opportunity to practice, now is the time to do that. There's a sense of urgency around that because even like everybody's life, every human life that I've known is marked by suffering without a doubt. Even people who have it pretty good, they eventually seasickness, old age, dying, death, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And yet there's the idea that it could be a lot worse too, and even if it's really, really good, it's still impermanent, and still if you're clinging and you're, mired in ignorance, that you're still going to suffer. And it would be great to escape from that.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Yeah. I think we're in a good realm. I think
Yeah,
in the realm
yeah.
that we need to be to practice. Um,
I've heard it said. Now, I'm not this is not dogma or this is not anything. This is just Daniel's BS stuff, right? But I have heard it said that we are actually we are actually in a Buddha field or Buddha realm right now. We're in Shakyamuni's Buddha field right now. And that the reason why, so people talk about other Buddhas, pure lands, right? These other
mhm.
realms that are so beautiful and amazing and wonderful. Well, what is it? Like, why are why are we here suffering?
Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah,
because of our ignorance, right? That
yeah.
actually we would see this, we would experience this pure land, we would see this pure land, we would be in this Buddha field right now if we could clear up this ignorance and this craving.
That's right. Because aren't there, like the different beings, right? Maybe we'll see a substance such as water in a completely different way, right? Where it's like, maybe a human might see it as water, whereas a hungry ghost might see it as like pus or something,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like dependent on your state.
Absolutely, absolutely. It isn't even that far-fetched, right? Like it sounds like, oh, crazy. Like, so why would a seemingly imaginary being think that water is pus? Think about it. It like you were saying, it's all of these things are contextual and dependent on our state, our perception. Think about like animals or human beings who have rabies, right? And how they then when water, they become whatever it's called, hydrophobic, right? And they can't even drink water. They're thirsty, they're dying of thirst, and
Yeah,
yet they can't drink water. As soon as they drink water, they got to spit it out. It causes their throat to clench up. And so they get scared of water because water is painful. Water is like, sure, they need it. They still need it, but they can't have it, right?
yeah,
Like what a terrible situation. And that's something that exists in our world. I mean, like that's just like here. That's a condition, right?
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so it's not that far-fetched.
I wonder if maybe an approach that might be helpful for these kind of like pleasures that we get stuck in is imagining it from the perspective of maybe a different being,
Yeah.
like that beautiful piece of tiramisu that you're lusting after. Like, what would a like a hungry ghost or a hell being might experience that as like a piece of shit. um
Yeah.
and so it's really dependent. I know uh it for monastics, but it's also something that lay practitioners can do too, is um this contemplation on the body as foul.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh,
like,
yeah.
people, especially helpful for people who are trying to be celibate, or, not engage as much sexual activity, for various reasons, like might, do this contemplation on the body and all of the different, like, kind of
Oh my gosh, it is so
disgusting things,
helpful.
right? And Shanti Deva has a great, great chapter on that, right? Where he's like
Yes.
going through all the nastiness and like, why would I lust after this? Even,
Yeah.
like, yeah, we cover it with beautiful oils and perfumes, but underneath is all this just like going to be rotting meat that's going to be carried off by
That's
vultures.
right. That's right. I love there's a in that same passage, he talks about the, after the person has died, right? And he says, something like when she was veiled with, fabric, you lusted after what was beneath. But look, her veils have been completely removed.
Yeah.
Why get in there, start smooching, right? Yeah. Oh my God, I love that stuff. And it is
Love
super
it.
helpful, super helpful. Not even just about when it comes to celibacy, but even, speaking from personal experience, I know that, even just sort of like lustful thoughts, right?
Yeah.
This sort of where you're like, oh my God, they're so attractive. Oh, I want them so bad. That
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So you got to witness, like, oh, look at that. I'm not intentionally doing this. My mind is just automatically in this craving mode, and I'm overemphasizing the positives. What can
Right.
what can I do here? Well, let me just balance it out. I'm off balance because I'm overemphasizing the positives here. Yes, beautiful body, form, all that. Nothing wrong with that. Great. Also,
Also.
also, like and it doesn't take very long where all of a sudden you're like, oh, right. It's just a person.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right. It's so taming. It's taming
it
the
really is.
and I really like that approach that you use of like validating, right? The things that are coming up that are like pleasurable, where it's like,
Yeah,
oh, of course you're attracted to that person. They're gorgeous. And at the
absolutely.
same time, like they're also just, a human. They're just a
Look at
body,
that. It's just
and
a body. Look at
right.
that,
And so I
right?
think that can really help, is like when we can hold both of those things, to be true at once. And then it gives a little bit of understanding to the pleasure seeking
Yeah.
part of you.
It works the other way too, Jack, just for reference. So,
Yeah, yeah,
if you have strong aversion or judgment, like body shaming type of, like where you find certain body types to be something, like you have an aversion to them and you're like, ew, they're so gross. Look at
yeah,
that.
yeah,
In those cases, it's actually kind of fun to do the exact opposite and be like, okay,
yeah.
yeah, I recognize that. I see what you're saying. But also, like, look how soft their skin is. And, like whatever. And start to, like, sort of like imagine all the beauty and wonder and, like, like,
Look at this human. Look at this
look at this
amazing
human.
being.
Like, isn't this amazing? Because I like to think about it, like if we are out in nature, right? Let's say we're on a boat and we see a pod of orcas going by, right? And like we would just be in awe, right? And
Yeah.
if one of them was little and one of them was big and one of them had barnacles and one of them
Right.
didn't, we would
Totally.
not even care. We would be like,
We just be like,
they're
yes.
all so amazing and beautiful and wonderful, right? And the same is true for us. Think about it. Every cat
Yeah,
you see, you're like, dude, that's a beautiful cat, right?
yeah.
Even the funky looking ones, you're like,
I love
oh,
every
I
cat.
love your cat. Oh, these are
Yeah.
so great, right? Why is that not true for human bodies?
Yeah.
Of course.
100%.
Yeah.
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 Oh, Dharma. So helpful.
It's so much fun.
So
I
taming.
love this
So
stuff.
fun.
Oh my gosh, so taming, so fun. Yeah, it
Taming
is.
and
It
fun.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, this has been a pleasure.
As always,
A
Jack.
pleasurable hour.
So
Um,
pleasant. And
it
yet, like all things, it has come to an end.
has come to an end. But we're gonna see each other next week.
Yes. Yes,
Tuesdays
indeed.
always somehow come around.
Yep.
And I can't wait. It's going to be wonderful.
All
Thanks
right.
everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hope to see some of you tomorrow for Ling Rinpoche, and it'll be recorded, right? So for folks who miss it.
That I don't know.
Okay, okay.
Not sure.
All right. Well, look into it.
Yeah.
It'll be on the
It
calendar.
is a because it's all I he did agree to the request to do an oral transmission, and so I'm not quite sure how that works, whether or not he
You have
wants
to
to
be
have it
private.
recorded. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Well, look for information about it
Yeah.
and how it went and all the things.
All that
All
jazz.
right.
See you
See
tomorrow,
you later.
Jack. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.